Well, good morning, and we're glad to have you with us this morning for our stories. Today's guest is Kathi Bondurant, and Kathi is going to share with us about a person in her life who was very influential, her grandmother Eads, and she's got some very interesting things to share with all of us about her grandmother, and so we'll let you get started here. Why don't you first tell us a little bit about her and the living arrangements where you spent quite a bit of time together with her.
Well, grandmother May Lycan Eads was born in 1880, and she died she was 94 when she died. And when I was 4 years old, my parents moved us into what we called the big house. And the big house was a large home in Paris, Illinois, where I grew up, that had been built by my great-great-grandfather in 1835. And it was on the corner, and it was a big house, and had a big yard, and it was just a wonderful place to be as a child. I was there for 5 years. And when we moved in, grandmother and grandfather were down in St. Louis. Grandfather was being treated for what they called in those days hardening of the arteries, but it was dementia. And he passed away after 2 years of them being there. And then grandmother came back, and she moved into the big house with us. And she lived upstairs, we lived downstairs. And we stayed there until I was 9.
Okay. So beginning with this, why you have the opportunity to spend a lot of time with her, and what kind of things did the two of you do together?
You know, in those days I was quite young, and I would go up, and I was just kind of fascinated by grandmother because she looked like she was a really old lady to me. But anyway, I would go up and spend some time with her upstairs, and she always liked for us to come up. And I'd sit with her for a short time and listen to her talk. She liked to tell stories about what we all used to call the olden days. And she would talk about the house and explained its history to me, and how it had gotten added on to over the years. And she and her husband had lived there. They moved into that house in 1921, and they already had 3 kids at that point. But anyway, just talked about raising the kids in the house. They had to have some help. It was a big yard. And grandmother talked about, she was explaining to me, I remember one story about how they all would go out to California in the summertime and spend some time with his sister, grandfather's sister, and the effort that they had to go to to get all the clothes in those days. The women wore all these big long dresses and a lot of paraphernalia, the corsets and all this and that. And she talked about how difficult it was to get everything packed and get on the train and make that big trip, and what a big effort it was. I remember talking about that. And then I remember couple of other things I remember is she loved to play cards, and she taught me how to play canasta, which was a very popular game at that time. And if I'd been a good girl, she would give me make brown cows, which is root beer and ice cream. That was a special treat that she always made for us.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that she showed a strong interest in you, and I mean, it wasn't just sort of casual visiting.
Yeah.
How did you know that she was really demonstrating?
Well, I would say mostly because she was always so welcoming and always very comfortable, and just she liked to share her life with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think really it was later, you know, when I became a teenager that I began to really understand, you know, because what we moved out of that big house, and in 1955 they had to take it down because the burden of the maintenance costs were too much for our family. So grandmother moved into a small home, and when I was able to get a driver's license, at one point I did have one, I would take the car and drive down and spend the afternoons with her. And it was during my teenage years that I really felt, you know, I really developed the bond with her.
Yeah.
And so that was the time.
Yeah. Well, you indicated to me that she was quite well-read and definitely kept up on current events and had some strong opinions.
Grandmother did not attend college, but she was very well informed about what was going on in the world. And she was a strong Democrat, and she had the St. Louis Post-Dispatch newspaper delivered every day, and she read it front to back. And she also watched the news religiously on TV. And she also did a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And she loved to talk about politics. And if anybody would listen, she'd talk about politics with them.
You said that there were instances in which your grandmother stood up for you and really helped.
Yeah, I think, you know, my folks were pretty, what I was telling you, I think, is that, you know, they lived through the Depression. Mom and Dad did as young people, and had known, they actually put their wedding off for a while, getting married, because Dad didn't have the income. He didn't feel that he could support Mom. And so the money was a big deal. And they were very conservative, very practical about things. And I think they were very uncomfortable with any kind of risk-taking, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, things needed to be, you need to feel sure that this is going to work before you do something.
Yeah.
And I, in my high school years, late high school years, I decided that social work was probably going to be the right profession for me to pursue. And I did go ahead, and when I went to McMurray College, I had a major in sociology and was proceeding with that plan, but Mother was very upset about it and wanted me to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be a teacher. So anyway, I was discussing this with Grandmother at the time, and she really encouraged me to do what your dreams are, fulfill your dreams, do what you believe is right for you, and it'll work out, okay? And that was kind of one of her big messages,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that was true about anything that I would talk with her about. If I had concerns or questions, it was very reassuring. You know, she encouraged me to do what felt right to me, and that was just a really good relationship that we had.
Yeah.
And I got a good job with the state of Illinois, working for Department of Children and Family Services, and I had a secure income, and I had insurance, and I was able to support myself, you know, well, and so that all finally eased up. Everything got, as Grandmother said, it got better.
And your mom found out you couldn't make a living without teaching.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You indicated you felt like that there were several things that your grandmother really kind of instilled in you that shaped your thinking and outlook on life.
I think that she definitely instilled the importance of knowing your family history. And by knowing your family history, it helps you to understand who you are. And she spent a lot of time talking about our family history when I would sit and talk with her. That was one of her joys, is just to kind of reminisce about the family, this person, that person, how it all fell together, you know.
Yeah.
And that was very important to her. I think she thought that was one of her jobs as a grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And also I think she emphasized, no matter what kind of differences you have with, you know, as you become an adult with your siblings or your close family members, she's really speaking about my siblings, remain close, stay close. And I do that. You know, that's something I have followed up on. You know, we have a lot of variation, religious, in our family. You know, my brother-in-law was a strong Republican, and but we have very, very good relationships at this point. And grandmother, she was a very faithful Christian. I mean, she went to church and very serious about all that. But she did not focus so much on salvation as she did on social justice issues, the social justice issues of the day, which she talked about as often. And I think by all of that, that kind of shaped my religious thinking. And I had been I've been in different churches as an adult, but the Presbyterian Church is where I think I fit best. And so I think that grandmother had a big part of that, because the Presbyterian Church has a strong social justice agenda.
Yeah. Well, she sounds like a very interesting person.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm sorry that I never met her.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I would have enjoyed her. But thank you very much for
You're welcome.
sharing her with us today.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.